Project SHIVOHAM, an initiative that was started to bring forward the distant, forgotten, and most importantly, the glorious heritage of Bharat. And 100,000 of you who subscribed, and tens of thousands of people who watched our content. Thank you so much for your incredible support. To mark this milestone and to bring forward our content closer to you, we are launching our Twitter and Instagram handles. The links are given in the description. It'd be great to connect with each and every one of you. We always believe that the best way to thank you is to bring forward more reliable and authentic content. And this short documentary is no different. If you are from India, you must have heard the word MAHABHARAT for sure. And if you're not from India, MAHABHARAT is one of the most important historical records of ancient India and is also the world's largest epic and historical document known to mankind. So if you have heard of MAHABHARAT, these are the general ways through which we have experienced it. Number 1. Bhagavad Gita. We know that it is an integral part of Mahabharat, and also yes, we all know that it is one of the most important itihasas as part of Indian culture. And third, we have experienced Mahabharat as a TV serial back in Doordarshan or even in the movies like Bahubali, where Mahabharat forms the master template of the plot. These are the general understandings or experiences that we all have about Mahabharat, right? But is it all? Is Mahabharat relevant for a day of age today? Is it useful for us in one format or the other? The larger epic? Definitely yes. And this is our first attempt on bringing forward Mahabharat in totally different perspective, which is relevant for each and every one of us. Imagine a tree full of fruits. The fruit of the tree and the root of the tree are deeply connected with each other. They all come from one single seed, right? The connect that starts from the roots to the bark, the tree, branches, leaves, flowers, fruits, everything is deeply connected, right? This is exactly how the culture and language and heritage of a nation is also always deeply connected over a period of time. Satyameva Jayati, the highest value of the Republic of India, which translates to truth alone triumphs. Now imagine that the fruit here is the Constitution of India and its values. Now what is the root of it? Where did this thought of Satyameva Jayate came from? Why is India today proudly the most diverse and inclusive nation across the world? This is a very important introspection that each and every one of us have to do, especially for the youngsters between the age group of 13 to 25, and if you are aspiring to get into the public administration sphere, this video is for you. Let's try to understand what is the root of the current values of the Republic of India, which is the most diverse, inclusive, secular and pluralistic cultures in the whole world. Statecraft, one of the most important subjects in the field of humanities. And if you're hearing about statecraft for the first time, it is all about what are the duties of a king or a government, what are the responsibilities of the people, how a nation is to be conducted in different facets like public policy making, public welfare and administration, law enforcement, and a lot more. For us today, the Constitution of India is the highest authority which decides the statecraft of India. But how was statecraft in India thousands of years ago during the times of Mahabharat? Understanding that eventually will give us the roots of the values of the Republic of India today. We try to analyze the entire Mahabharatam, the 18 chapters, from a statecraft point of view. What each of these chapters or where the statecraft is mentioned and who mentioned that. And what we understand is there are 4 important gurus in the entire Mahabharatam who explained statecraft. The first one is Narada Maharshi, who explained statecraft to Yudhishthira. And the second one is Vidura, who explains statecraft to Dhritarashtra. And third, we have Bhishmacharya, who teaches statecraft to Yudhishthira. And finally, we have Bhagavan Sri Krishna, who practically plays statecraft in the entire Mahabharatam. And in this short documentary, let's try to understand the statecraft explained in Mahabharatam by these 4 gurus. The first one, statecraft as explained by Narada Maharshi. Before understanding what he said, let's understand who he is. Unfortunately, in Indian films, Narada Maharshi is often portrayed as a humorous or a funny character, which is fundamentally incorrect and shows the poor knowledge of the filmmakers about Narada Maharshi as described in the scriptures. For instance, here is how Narada Maharshi is described in Sabhaparvam of Mahabharatam. He is highly conversant with Vedas, Upanishads, Nyaya Shastra, Vedangas, Sankhya Shastra, and Yoga Shastras, and a lot more. Just one example is enough to set the record straight. Narada Maharshi is the first one who gave Sri Ramayana to Valmiki in 100 verses, which was eventually elaborated by Valmiki Maharshi as Sri Ramayana what we know today. In the scriptures, Narada Maharshi is highly revered, and the statecraft what we're going to see now is another example of an incredible piece of knowledge that he shared as part of Mahabharata. In Sabhaparvam of Mahabharatam, Narada Maharshi visits Yudhishthira in his court, and as part of this conversation, Narada Maharshi teaches Yudhishthira about how a state needs to be run. It spans across hundreds of slokas and it's impossible for us to comprehend. So we just tried to handpick a couple of topics which he taught Yudhishthira on how he need to run the state. As a king, how sensibly to spend your resources, how not to compromise on the ethics and morals for wealth. 6 highly important qualities that a king should cultivate. How to know the strengths and weaknesses of your kingdom. How to assess your enemy on 14 different grounds. How to secure your people from all facets of life. How to select your ministers, a state workforce. Are you as a king approachable to public during the times of grief? The 7 most important positions: chief commander of the army, chief judge, chief physician of the nation, chief astrologer, chief priest, chief of commerce, chief in charge of your fort. These 7 positions should always be fulfilled with the people whom you trust as much as you trust yourselves. How the cycle of commerce should always run smoothly in your kingdom. How to monitor the loyalty of your ministers. 14 bad qualities that a king should never possess while leading a country, and a lot more. So all these are different lessons of statecraft, or the principles or rules that a king needs to strictly follow to run a nation successfully. These are all the principles of statecraft as explained by Narada Maharshi to Yudhishthira. Now let's briefly see how Vidura explains statecraft to Dhritarashtra. Let us briefly understand who is Vidura in Mahabharata. Vidura is the son of Vedavyasa and half-brother of Pandu and Dhritarashtra, who are eventually the fathers of 5 Pandavas and 100 Kauravas. Vidura in Mahabharatam is revered as a man of great intellect, wisdom, and is also a great philosopher. The conversations between Vidura and his half-brother Dhritarashtra are very important in Mahabharatam because they hold the dialectical essence of Mahabharatam. And as part of those conversations, Vidura also narrates how a state needs to be run by focusing completely on what are the good qualities of a king. The essence of the conversation between Vidura and Dhritarashtra is popularly known as Vidura Niti, and what we are going to see now is part of it. Just like how the conversation between Narada Maharshi and Yudhishthira spans across hundreds of slokas, the statecraft which we just saw. Same way, the conversation between Vidura and Dhritarashtra also spans across hundreds of slokas. So we just handpicked very few of them as follows. What are the qualities of a wise man and that of a fool? What is the importance of intellect for a king? How lack of wise public policies can destroy a king and his entire kingdom? What are the qualities of people who are not trustworthy? And how to identify traitors? 8 undesirable qualities of a king. 8 indicators that lead to a downfall of a person. 8 sources of happiness and finding purpose of life. The key tactics that a king can employ in making decisions. 8 different tests that reveal the true character of any person. How to be diplomatic with your enemy. How a king should win his subordinates. How to identify a friend or an ally in diplomacy. How should a king speak in different situations? How should a king master the art of self-control? How should a king acquire comprehensive wisdom? How should a king acquire the right conduct, most important of all? And many more. Like this, Vidura explains a mix of both philosophy as well as statecraft to Yudhishthira, which is comprehensively known as Vidura Niti. And this part of Mahabharatam is very essential and relevant for the current day of the age. And now let's see the statecraft as explained by Bhishmacharya, who is the linchpin for the grand epic of Mahabharatam. And if you take a quick look at the entire family tree of the grand epic of Mahabharatam, Bhishmacharya is the son of Shantanu Maharaja and Ganga Devi. And Bhishmacharya is revered as the grand old man in the entire epic of Mahabharatam. He is the kingmaker, but never the king. But at the same time, he is the most powerful warrior in the grand epic of Mahabharatam, and out of the 18 days of the battle of Kurukshetra, he dictated the course of the war for the first 10 days. He is highly revered as the great-grandfather by both the Kauravas and Pandavas. and is also revered as a man of great intellect, wisdom, and valor. A grandson killing his own grandfather, and the grandfather blessing his grandson for fulfilling his duties. Understanding the essence of Mahabharatam leaves one speechless. After fighting on opposite sides and Bhishmacharya falls down for the arrows of Arjuna, who is his grandson, on his deathbed, Bhishmacharya teaches his grandson Yudhishthira the entire statecraft, and this conversation is the baseline for Chanakya's Ardhashastra, which was eventually authored a couple of thousands of years later. Of the 18 chapters of the grand epic of Mahabharatam, 2 full chapters, Shanti Parvam and Anushasana Parvam, holds the conversation between Bhishmacharya and Yudhishthira, deeply focusing on the statecraft and how he as a king should conduct the nation. Both Shanti Parvam and Anushasana Parvam put together amounts to 20% of Mahabharatam in its volume and approximately 40% of the Mahabharatam in its essence. Such is the importance of both these chapters. Structurally, this is how Shanti Parvam looks like. It has 3 sub-parvas or sub-chapters. The first one is Rajadharma Anushasana Parvam, the qualities and duties of a king. And the second one is Apadharma Anushasana Parvam, which is the code of conduct during crisis. And the third one is Moksha Dharma Parvam, which explains about the morals and ethics that a king and his people should be following in the state. And then comes Anushasana Parvam, which has 2 sub-chapters. The first one is Dana Dharma Parvam, which is the code of charity and social responsibilities of the king and the people in his kingdom. And the second subchapter is Bhishma Svargarohana Parvam, which is the heavenly ascent of Bhishmacharya, the final chapter where he breathes his last, leaving his final messages for everyone. And here are some of the important lessons of statecraft taught by Bhishma to Yudhishthira. The king should first subdue himself and then subdue his foes. There is nothing superior to the truth. It is the ultimate power. This point directly ascribes to the Satyameva Jayate. To get freedom from anger, one should learn how to forgive. By self-control, one can be free from false hopes, how to architect a network of spies in the kingdom, how to strategize both diplomatic and wartime situations, how to take unbiased decisions while judging offenses, how should a king design the commerce system of his kingdom, how to manage crisis situations in the kingdom, and a lot more. And let's finally see the statecraft as explained by the ringmaster of Mahabharatam, Bhagavan Sri Krishna. About Sri Krishna, he is revered as the incarnation of Lord Sri Mahavishnu, that we all know. But there is something about Sri Krishna which probably most of us might not know, and here it is. Soon after Bhishmacharya falls down for the arrows of Arjuna and lies on his deathbed in the war field, Bhagavan Sri Krishna asks Bhishmacharya to teach statecraft or Raj Dharma to Yudhishthira, which we just saw. And this short conversation is something that happened just before Bhishmacharya taught statecraft to Yudhishthira. When Sri Krishna asks Bhishmacharya to teach Dharma Shastra to Yudhishthira, Bhishmacharya says, Krishna, you are the creator, you are the one who holds the sustenance and the destructor, and who knows the Vedas and Dharma Shastras better than you? Why don't you, Krishna, yourself explain to Yudhishthira? Why do you want me to do that? And the reply of Sri Krishna to Bhishmacharya is something which needs to be written in golden letters. Krishna says, Bhishma, I am the origin of Vedas and Dharma, but it is most powerful if Dharma is taught by the one who practices it than just by the one who created it. So even though I am the creator of the Dharma, you practiced it throughout your life, and you are more eligible to teach it to anyone else than me. Here the message is, knowing is of no use unless it is put to practice. For instance, everybody knows that corruption is absolute crime, but still people beg, I repeat the word, people beg under the table for bribes. So knowing is not sufficient, putting it to practice is really needed, and that's what the message of Sri Krishna here is. And on a lighter note, the word dharma here, in Hindi especially, we use the word dharam for religion, but that's not right. Dharma actually means duties of a person with respect to the time and place he or she is in. That's what dharma is, and it continuously changes with these 2 parameters, the place and time. And dharma does not mean any religion. The statecraft, as explained by Narada Maharshi or Vidura or Bhishmacharya, is concentrated in specific parvas in Mahabharatam. It is referenceable and one can read and try to understand the statecraft explained by these three gurus. But the statecraft demonstrated by Sri Krishna is very complex and spans across all the highlighted parvas here in Mahabharatam. And understanding the statecraft demonstrated by Sri Krishna is not that easy. For instance, as per Dhanurvedam, an unarmed enemy should never be attacked. But during the war, Sri Krishna orders a kill on Karna and Arjuna executes it. Superficially, this sounds to be unethical or immoral, but that wartime decision made by Bhagavan Sri Krishna has a very deep background and context. So superficially it seems like Sri Krishna did not follow dharma, but it is not true. There is a deep context behind the killing of Karna. So that is the reason statecraft as demonstrated by Sri Krishna is not easy for us to understand unless we are taught by a guru who has mastered the grand epic of Mahabharata beyond what just meets the eye. And needless to mention about Bhagavad Gita, which is the epitome of all the Indian scriptures, which is the corpus knowledge system where Bhagavan Sri Krishna explains about how one needs to organize his or her own self, and it holds quite a lot of lessons which are very relevant for people who are deeply in the public administration, executing statecraft in every walk of their professional lives. So if we zoom out and take a big picture of the entire Mahabharatam from a statecraft standpoint, this is how it looks like. Explained by Narada Maharshi, called as Narada Niti in Sabha Parvam, explained by Vidura as Vidura Niti in Udyoga Parvam, and statecraft by Bhishmacharya in Shanti Parvam and Anushasana Parvam, and the statecraft explained by Sri Krishna as part of Bhagavad Gita in Bhishma Parvam. All these are very crucial references about the ethics and morals and the values that a king need to uphold in his kingdom and how people need to adhere to the law of the land. And like I said earlier, for the youngsters who are between the age group of 13 to 25 who are in the core learning phase of life and aspiring to get into the public administration sphere with UPSC and likes of it, you will be the executors of statecraft in near future, and you should understand how the roots of the statecraft in India has evolved over thousands of years, not for its legal validities but for its ethics, values and morals, and most importantly the rich heritage of India. And ask yourselves a very simple question: why do we believe in Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam? Why do we believe in Satyameva Jayate? Why do we believe in Dharmo Rakshati Rakshitah? And while doing so, put aside your religious or political affinities or affiliations for a simple reason: the Constitution of India stands high above any other religious law or a scripture or anything else. And to understand its roots, you have to be very unbiased, focusing only on the truth. If we turn the pages of the history to understand the evolution of statecraft in Bharat, here is how it goes. The Constitution of the Republic of India is at the epitome as we know today, which drives the nation. And before that, we had great kings of India like Vikramaditya, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, Sri Krishna Devaraya, and many other great kings of Bharat who set great examples on how the nation needs to be conducted. Further down, we have incredible inspiration and references from the Itihasas of Bharat, which are Sri Ramayanam and Mahabharatam, which stands great examples of statecraft, of which we just saw a couple of samples from Mahabharatam. And further down, we have Upavedas and Upanishads like Ardhashastra, and in fact, Satyameva Jayate, what we have as the highest value of the Republic of India, is a derivative from Mundaka Upanishad, which eventually ascribes to Atharvana Veda. And at the bottom, we have the basis of Vedas, where Atharvana Vedam, which forms the bedrock foundation of all the values, morals and ethics which have been practiced in Bharat since thousands of years. And that is the connect between the fruit and the root. And as always, thanks for watching. Jai Hind.